as being contagious. Somebody actually did some experiments with that virus later on. I don't know how they ever got this approved by an institutional review board, but they actually took mucus from people with the H1N1 flu. This is now in modern times, and they implanted it at, they would put it in the nostrils of people. They had people with H1N1 flu coughing on them, etc. And guess what? The recipients didn't get sick at all. So we wonder, what is, the word influenza is very interesting. You know where it comes from? The influence of the stars, folks, because nobody really understands how these things interact with us. And we can say, yeah, we can point to a virus and say that's it. But then there's this correlation with the introduction and proliferation of big technology that totally changes the Earth's energy field. The next one, 1957, powerful radar. This was during the Cold War. We had to see, are Russians going to shoot any missiles over the Arctic Circle? And we put up a lot of this stuff around the world. Big, powerful radar. Now, interestingly, these are all radio waves so far. And so is, radio spectrum is 5G as well, along with millimeter. But, okay, this was the Asian flu, the H2N2. 2 million deaths, 1957. I don't have a case number on that. It was very hard to find. I did this recently, but I couldn't find clear numbers, but the number of deaths were clear. In 1968, we had the Hong Kong flu arrive, the H3N2. And what was the technology proliferated then was military satellites. A whole lot of satellites went up then. Again, changing the ionosphere of the Earth. 3 to 4 million deaths. So now, 2019, COVID. And this is just the figures as of yesterday. Greater than 265 cases worldwide, greater than 3,281 deaths. But of course, it's not over. And with these other epidemics, many of them surged in late winter, early spring, then disappeared in summer, and then only to come back in fall and winter, and they kept around for 1 or 2 years. And then we had the H1N1 reoccur in modern times. And we can say, well, where did these things come from? Originally it was thought they come from animals, they jump from birds. By the way, birds are among the most sensitive creatures to electromagnetic field changes. Birds, yes. They use it in navigation and orientation. And when that's screwed up, they can't even migrate. And maybe the viruses are developing, or at least originally in birds, way back when, and maybe today they're tinkered with in bioweapons labs, who knows. But here's something to consider. I'm not saying that 5G causes COVID-19 cases, but it's interesting to note that where we have the 5G rollout in a big way, we have the highest levels. But of course, that's mainly China. Wuhan, China has probably the most extensive rollout in China, as it's been said, as of last fall, and the virus started there, apparently. And right now, I understand they have 10,000 5G antennas and 30,000 base stations in a city of, is it 11 million?
City, Wuhan proper is, I think, almost 9 million, and metro is something like 11 million.
Okay. And the People's Republic of China, the whole country, I couldn't find the number of base stations that have been implemented as of now, but 130,000 5G antennas have been implemented. And other regions like Hunan, south of Wuhan, the Hunan province, and a few others, also have extensive 5G rollout, and they're also most implicated. South Korea is another one. They were way ahead of the West in terms of 5G, already with self-driving cars. You can watch videos of those going around in South Korea. So they've rolled it out, and they also have a high level of COVID-19. Now, Italy, I don't know whether 5G has been rolled out in Milan, or the other northern areas, Venice, etc. In Iran, I don't know. I couldn't find. Iran said they didn't want 5G, but they may be testing it. They have some deal going on with Huawei. That's what I could find online. So there are some thoughts about 5G, what frequency is it, 60 gigahertz, and how it implicates oxygen disrupts oxygen molecule?
Well, here there's some discussion going on about the connection between 5G and the coronavirus. Because one thing is really quite striking. The very epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak is Wuhan, but Wuhan had just a few weeks before the first coronavirus was detected in early December. Just a few weeks, something like 4 weeks earlier, Wuhan went finally live commercially with 5G. It was the first city in China to go live with it. And just 4 weeks later, we have a coronavirus outbreak. Now, I'm not saying this is causal, but there certainly appears to be a correlation. And the fact is that this is what happened. So we need to look into it a little bit deeper.
Well, here's a couple of things we know. I already mentioned that microbes, at least bacteria and molds, that are pathogens, grow faster when exposed to these frequencies. We also know that the immune system is compromised when people are exposed to 1G up through 5G. Viruses, we don't know, they're not exactly alive. They're kind of halfway between life and no life. But they might also be behaving differently in growing in people in the presence of 5G in ways that we don't understand. So that it could be a causal factor. And another thing we have to consider, Wuhan is the site of a biosafety level 4 containment facility, which means that's their bioweapons facility. Now, I'm not saying that this may be related or not. People have speculated whether something leaked out and came home with somebody accidentally, or whether it's purposeful, or whether something was installed there because it would make it look like an accident. So there's all kinds of speculation there.
I just wanted to refer to, say something about, some people have said that 60 gigahertz, which is part of the 5G frequency, couples strongly to the oxygen molecule, and that's true. That's actually why the government doesn't even like to use that band, because, I mean, what's the point? I mean, you shoot your 60 gigahertz through air and it gets attenuated. So that's a frequency you want to avoid. So that's why it was probably easy for the military to say, okay, you can give that spectrum to the public. And so that's how it ended up to be an unlicensed band. Now, every unlicensed band, you can expect it to get crowded very, very quickly. So some people have now surmised that that the 60 gigahertz that is being rolled out interacts negatively with the oxygen molecule, and now there is depression of oxygen uptake by hemoglobin. And somebody or many people concluded that that might be why people are having breathing problems with 5G. I tried to find a correlation between it, and frankly, I cannot find a correlation. Also, as a nuclear physicist, I can tell you the following. If you have electromagnetic radiation interacting with a molecule, in this case the O2 molecule, that is an effect that has an extremely short activation time, and if you stop the electromagnetic radiation, then it has an extremely short relaxation time, meaning it immediately stops, and I'm talking about within a microsecond. So that means even if you breathe in this oxygen that is being activated by 5G, as soon as it enters your body, and it hasn't even reached the lungs, it immediately turns into normal oxygen, so to speak, because 60 gigahertz is not going into your body. It's not quite true, but for the most part, it's your body will shield it. And so that's why this cannot be true. There's a viral video by Dana Ashley, and we really appreciate that lady. She did a great job. But I'm afraid that in this respect, she is not correct.
Yes, and I would say, Harry and I hold the idea that there are viruses. I think we can safely say that pandemics have been caused by real viruses, particles that have been analyzed in the laboratory that are made of RNA or DNA, and this is an RNA virus. And in this case, I would say 5G adds a level of complexity and possible causal factor in making people sicker, and in ways that we haven't yet fully understood, but are implicated by the literature that we know about how 5G affects microbes and hurts the immune system. So we'll leave it at that. So the last section of our talk is how to stay healthy in the wireless digital era. And we see 4 types of strategies. One is you really need a meter to measure levels in your home and workplace. You need to know what you're exposed to. And you need to reduce your exposure as much as possible. It's like reducing your exposure to toxic chemicals. You don't want to eat salmon and tuna every day. That's not a good idea because these big fish have mercury. So you want to limit, and you want to do the same with your exposure. Secondly, you want to, or thirdly, you want to use protective measures that are validated scientifically and not just some people selling gizmos saying, oh yes, my thing totally blocks radiation. You put this on the backside of your cell phone and you can talk as long as you like and you're safe. It's completely irresponsible, and I haven't seen anything that I've tested that makes people 100% safe. And earthing is a good thing, grounding and using earthing technology. So now we'll go into detail on these. The present meter for 4G that we highly recommend is the Cornet ED8AT Plus. And we have it here. It costs about $180. And it's a multimeter. It'll do radio frequencies as well as extremely low frequencies, magnetic and electric. So it's quite versatile, and it's easy to operate, and it has a little recording of how these things bounce around, so you really get the sense of how digital signals change and are not constant like analog is. So we actually want to build a meter, and Harry's built a prototype which he's hoping to show some aspects of here today. And our meter will be able to take you through all the way from 1G to 5G and maybe beyond, right?
Yes, so this is what we envision, that it will be an affordable meter and that will show you the pertinent information. What are you being hit with? What is the frequency, at least roughly? And once you have that, you can go around, you can identify transmitters, you can then even identify from what direction it's coming, and then you can take measures, then you can take countermeasures. So for example, if you find that your phone is radiating all the time, even though you're not using, well then you know to unplug it, so you can sleep better. So we feel that a meter is really important. And as Beverly said, right now we can measure everything up to about 6, 7, or 8 gigahertz. But that does not cover the higher bands of 5G. So we have to be ready with a meter that can do 5G.
And so Harry's been working on this and has something in a prototype level 1. We're looking for funding, I'm going to put the word out, for full development of subsequent stages of this device. So if you folks know of any, we're prepared with both a nonprofit corporation of 24 years, looking for philanthropy and foundation money, and a for-profit corporation when it gets to the stage where we would spin it off and look for investors. So we need to reduce our exposure to wireless, and prudent avoidance is the best thing. Be aware, be conscious about your meter. I had somebody visit me yesterday who, for health consultation, she had had salivary gland cancer here and had a meningioma, which is a non-cancer brain tumor on the other side. And I said, you know these things are related to your cell phone. She said, yes, for 20 years I was a software engineer and held my cell phone to my ear throughout the day working. But she walked out of my office popping her Bluetooth earphones in. I said, wait a minute. You can't use those. That's more the same. Again, habit. We're creatures of habit. And she just plopped them in her ear and said, oh, you're right. Oh, never again. And you should just throw them away, really. They're no good for you when you've had already 2 brain tumors. So, yes, we need to become more conscious and make new habits because our old habits are not serving us. keep your cell phone on airplane mode as much as possible. Your airplane mode setting, and you must turn off Bluetooth and wireless as well. That's 3 things to turn off.
And by the way, this is now actually the high note, because what we conclude is that we have actually a lot of control over our exposure. We can actually substantially reduce our exposures over which we are in control. We're not in control of Verizon's tower that they planned somewhere, but we are in control of our homemade radiation. And it actually turns out that our homemade radiation is really the biggest culprit. So fortunately we have some control over there, and hopefully we will show you some solutions.
Yes, and instead of using a tablet or cell phone with wireless, use a computer with wires. You can go back to DSL Ethernet if you gave it up. By the way, it's faster, it's safer, it can't be hacked. I don't know how we got sold this bill of goods that wireless was the way to go. We never got there. We stayed wired, and we're happy. We want wires. That should be our mantra. Yes.
Let's go wireless less.
So back to Ethernet DSL. And even there's even a way to use your cell phone hooked up to a USB port and use it wired. And we can eliminate DECT phones. These are wireless landline phones, and Harry brought a few of them to show you how much they really emit. They emit more than your smartphone. And they're emitting all the time.
By the way, you all, well, oh yeah, you are of that age group that still remembers the Ethernet cable, right? Okay, your children or grandchildren may say, whoa, what's that? But with an Ethernet cable coming out of your router, you can actually connect your iPhone to it. There's an Ethernet to Lightning, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, Ethernet to Lightning adapter is like $20. If you have an Android, there's an Ethernet to USB connector. So you really only need your cell phone if you're out and about and you need to make a call. So if you want to surf the internet at home, I mean, there's really no reason why you wouldn't want to plug in, and you do yourself a favor.
And like me, I suggest you eliminate your wireless mouse and your wireless keyboards because they're not serving you. They're blasting you with the same frequencies, and you have to replace the battery in those mice. How silly is this? A wired mouse is always on. So think wired whenever you're using technology. Make it wired whenever possible, and you'll be much safer. So protective measures, shielding is possible. I recently bought myself one of those t-shirts with silver threads in it that block about 90% of radio frequencies. And you can wear that like an undershirt underneath normal clothes. For heart protection, because many of us are getting palpitations and arrhythmias, and I think it goes back to these devices. There's nothing wrong with our hearts. They're just getting hyper-reactive to those fields out there that are trying to drive it to higher frequencies. There are bunches of pendants and things in the market. I'll show you a couple that I've studied that show some efficacy with protection. And there's a great website. I'm just giving this out. I'm not connected with them. lessemf.com that sells a lot of devices and apps as well as clothing. And here's some examples. I've heard from electrosensitive people that wearing a cap or a kind of scarf, you can put like a mosquito netting silver threaded thing around your bed. So even if there's a lot of antennas out there, you can sleep well.
By the way, in the lower right corner, you see a hoodie. Now I have to warn you, if you go into your bank and you want to deposit a check, they won't let you unless you take your hoodie off. And that's, of course, for facial recognition, for your own safety.
Right. So here's something we saw in China, and then we wondered, why isn't it in the United States? We learned about EMF shielded aprons for pregnant women. And we got some information that maybe isn't so because other Chinese then denied it. One person told us the Chinese government dispenses these when you're pregnant. And somebody else said they never saw pregnant women wearing them. So I'm not sure exactly what the story is.
But here's something else. we learned that the Chinese government removed the wires, the underwires from the bras about 2013 or something like that. Now that was curious. China, of course, produces all the bras for the entire planet, and all the bras arriving here on some container ship, they all have wires in them. Now, from an electrical engineering point of view, it's again curious. You know that in our world, everything that was solid and was made out of metal was replaced with plastic, which then keeps breaking, so we have to buy new. Except the wires in the bra, which really should be plastic.
Some are, actually.
Yeah, some are.
Oh, some are?
A few,
Okay.
very few.
Okay, but now if you have metal in the bras, it has to have a high nickel content, because otherwise it will get rusty. So it has to be stainless steel, which is expensive. So from an MBA point of view, this makes no sense. Why would you want to put wires into a bra when that's where really plastic should go? So that was curious. But the other thing is, the wires just happen to be disconnected. So you have two wires, and each one is approximately 6 inches long, give or take. That just happens to be the exact same wavelength as the 2.5 gigahertz wave that comes out of your wireless device. So your underwire bras are now collecting, they act as a receiving antenna first of all of this wireless technology, and then they re-radiate into your breast tissue, which is of course extremely sensitive to this radiation. So I highly recommend that you remove the wires or replace it with plastic.